Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, July 10th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the San Joaquin Valley. But how much do we know about how to prevent it?
And we know that one of the biggest risk factors is when people lose hope and they don't feel that it would matter if they were gone.
We discuss the alarming suicide rate in the valley and how you can get help. That's coming up in just a moment, but first, these headlines. President Donald Trump is escalating a battle with California over transgender student athletes. The administration filed a lawsuit Wednesday against the state's Department of Education. The federal government alleges that the state is violating laws when it allows trans athletes to participate in girls' and women's sports. The federal DOJ had previously issued a legal threat against the state over the matter. This battle was thrust into the spotlight in May after a trans girl competed in the statewide track and field finals held in Clovis. Fresno County supervisors have declined to participate in a state-led process that seeks to improve jobs in the valley. Supervisors flatly rejected a proposal earlier this week to join the effort known as the Sierra San Joaquin Jobs Coalition. It's a coalition of groups seeking to generate jobs in different trades. It's part of a larger push by Governor Newsom to revamp the economy. Fresno County Supervisor Brian Pacheco said he didn't want the county to join the effort because of competing interests with the state.
I think we're delegating our powers away to the state for something that we later have to oppose. I don't want a seat at the table. I want to maintain local control, and I am not in favor of this item.
Supervisors also said they did not support the project because of the involvement of the Central Valley Community Foundation. Political observers are expecting a state assembly member from the valley to challenge a vulnerable House Republican in the upcoming midterm elections. Dr. Jasmeet Bains is seen as a likely contender against David Valadao of District 22. The district includes Bakersfield and Hanford. Valadao is facing criticism for voting for Trump's spending bill that includes cuts to Medicaid and increased funding for immigration enforcement. Bains recently posted on social media that it's, quote, time to call in the doctor, as she criticized the bill. Bains previously worked as a family medicine doctor in Bakersfield. The Kern County District Attorney says it has completed an investigation into a Democratic Party staffer. The DA's office says it found Christian Romo participated in outside political work using county resources. They additionally say Romo engaged in at least 4 political meetings and 1 interview last year using his county-issued computer and held it in his county office. Romo's a staffer for Kern County District 5 Supervisor Leticia Perez. Romo's taken accountability for the actions and will not face further penalties. He also underwent training to address the violations that were alleged against him. More dads in California are taking paid leave to care for a new child. Ellie Yu with our newsroom partner LAist has more.
When California first offered paid family leave as a state 2 decades ago, less than 20% of claims were from men. Now that figure has gone up to 44%. Molly Weston Williamson took a look at the data for a report published by the group Paid Leave for All.
Claims are going up from everybody, but what's really driving that overall increase is this gigantic increase in claims from men.
But data shows fathers who make lower incomes are still less likely to take family leave. And Williamson says that many parents don't know about the benefits they can get from the state. Starting this year, California increased the amount of money for new moms and dads.
That was Ellie Yu with our newsroom partner, LAist.
The Senate is expected to vote this month on a plan to defund America's public broadcasting stations, including KVPR. Help protect public media and programs like this one. Start a new monthly gift today at kvpr.org.
And now to our main story. And we start with a programming note. Today's topic may be sensitive for some. We will be discussing suicide. Suicide is among the leading causes of death for residents in the San Joaquin Valley. Rates here are about 15% higher than other parts of the state. That's according to new reporting from Tim Sheehan. He's a health reporting fellow for The Intersection. That's a health news website from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. Tim recently dug into the data examining suicide rates in the valley over the last 7 years. He looked at the numbers for Fresno, Kern, Tulare, San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Kings, Merced, and Madera counties. And he found during that time, more than 3,000 people died by suicide. Now, it's hard to understand why a person commits suicide, but demographic data can reveal some trends. For more on that, Tim joined us in the KVPR studios to discuss his reporting. I started by asking Tim if we know why suicide rates are higher here in the valley compared to other parts of the state.
Not particularly. You could say 15% higher is about how much higher it is in the valley than the state. In terms of reasons, that's kind of hard to put a finger on because a person who has committed suicide isn't around to explain why, generally, unless they leave a note. So we don't really have a good handle on that, to my knowledge. I did speak with Amanda Nugent Devine, who is the CEO of Kingsview Behavioral Health here in Fresno, and she's also a psychologist. And Kingsview runs the Central Valley Suicide Prevention Hotline. And she had some thoughts about some of the contributing factors to suicide.
And we know that one of the biggest risk factors is when people lose hope and they don't feel that it would matter if they were gone.
Now, Tim, I know you combed through a lot of data for this report.
Mm-hmm.
Any trends you saw?
Probably the biggest things that we noticed was over that 7-year period that we looked at, 2018 to 2024, men outnumbered women among suicide victims by a 4-to-1 margin.
Wow, 4-to-1.
4-to-1. By race, whites represented almost 3/4 of suicides. About 1/3 were among people of Hispanic or Latino ethnicity, regardless of race. And among age groups, the largest number of suicides occurred among people between the ages of 25 and 34, followed closely by the 35 to 44 age group.
So we know that the suicide rate here in the valley is higher than the state average. Do we know how what occurs here compares to national trends?
Very similar. We see similar breakdowns among age groups, race, et cetera. So it's pretty similar to what we see nationwide.
I think this begets sort of the conversation around mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Although I must say I found it really interesting that you spoke to a psychologist who you mentioned, Amanda Nugent Devine. She said mental health is not always the reason that people commit suicide. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. When I spoke with her, she indicated to me that while mental illness is certainly a contributor to suicide in many cases, some people who attempt or commit suicide don't fall into the category of having a diagnosed chronic mental illness, such as bipolar or schizophrenia or even clinical depression. Often it's a situation of life circumstances that can trigger a short-term or situational type of depression that doesn't necessarily rise to something that qualifies as a diagnosed mental illness. So in talking with Dr. Nugent Devine, she further elaborated on that point.
Everyone that commits suicide does not necessarily have had or a mental illness, right? They may be suffering from a depression that is situational, which does not mean they have a diagnosable mental illness. It may be completely circumstantial. Obviously a loss of a job, loss of a marriage, that we're going to probably feel sad.
Tim, in your reporting, I did appreciate that you noted that this topic of suicide is not something that's always socially acceptable to speak about. Did you ask anyone, how are we going to reduce suicide rates if we can't talk about this topic openly?
Again, talking with Dr. Nugent Devine, we discussed our society's perceptions about suicide and mental health, and the stigma that creates an awkwardness surrounding both of those issues. And that can serve to dissuade people from seeking help because of that stigma that's associated with that. One of the things she mentioned in our conversation is that some people who do seek help for a mental health concern would, because of that stigma, rather be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, because that implies that one is a victim of some sort of external circumstance rather than an internal mental issue, that there's something wrong with my brain. It's something that happened to you then.
Interesting. We could have a whole conversation, I'm sure, about that. But I do want to know, we know suicide rates are high here in the Valley. Are there any resources available to people who've been affected by this or could know someone who's affected by this?
Sure. One of the most readily available resources is the 988 Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Pick up your phone, dial 988, or you can text 988. It's a nationwide number that people can call or text if they're in crisis or if they fear that a loved one is considering suicide. It's a nationwide system, but when calls come in, they're routed to a local call center. In California, there are 12 such centers, and the Central Valley Suicide Prevention Hotline, based here in Fresno, is the one for the Valley, and it's operated by Kingsview Behavioral Health. The 988 system has counselors available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're trained to listen, to assess the severity of a potential suicide threat, and they can walk a caller through what they call a survival plan, just to get them through until they can seek, more in-depth help. I spoke with Carla Luna, who is the director of the Central Valley Hotline, and she had some thoughts about what purpose that lifeline serves.
A lot of it is just providing a listening ear. A lot of the times that's really all people need. They just need someone to talk to. At the time, they maybe don't have that support system at home, or maybe it's a situation where they just don't feel comfortable talking to the people around them of what they're going through and what's going on. And it's a little bit easier, to talk to a counselor.
Lastly, Tim, what can people do for themselves or for others to try to prevent getting to this place of hopelessness?
Well, there are a number of warning signs that people should be aware of. The National Institute of Mental Health details some indicators that a person may be thinking about suicide. And those may include talking about death or wanting to die or feeling or expressing feelings of guilt or shame or expressing feelings of being a burden to others, a person feeling empty or hopeless or trapped, maybe saying things like they don't feel like they have a reason to live, or rage, or going through what they feel is unbearable emotional or physical pain, and then changes in behavior, whether it's indications that maybe they're making a plan or researching ways to die, pulling back and withdrawing from friends or family, giving away important items, things that are meaningful to them because they don't feel they'll need them anymore, taking dangerous risks, using drugs or alcohol more frequently, and extreme mood swings. So those are things that people can watch out for in themselves and that they can watch out for in their loved ones if they have a concern that someone may be edging that direction.
Tim Sheehan, Health Reporting Fellow with The Intersection, a health reporting website from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. Thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
And if you or someone you know may be at risk, again, that number to call is 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Hotline. Help is available 24 hours a day. And that is today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.